Well, with both teams rolling in their week 1 tune-ups by combined 76 points, Saban said this week, everybody's got to look at this like it's a street fight. We're all going to be in the street fight. I don't know how many street fights Tim Tebow's been in, but certainly he was a heavyweight on the gridiron, our Heisman winner, our 2-time.
But this is kind of like a street fight for you.
Is it?
How does it feel? You're at Bama, but you're wearing Tennessee orange. I don't get it. Like, for such a Georgia Bulldog, is this just super uncomfortable?
No, it was like crazy subconscious that my mind just sort of gravitated to the orange in my closet. But alas, I'm not here representing for the Vols at all. I do want to talk about this game, and in particular the quarterback position, Timmy, because we were talking about this offline a little bit. On the one side, you've got Quinn Ewers and a very anxious Texas fan base who's calling for Arch Manning. And then on the other side, you've got Jalen Milroe, who sets program records last week and is still listed as a co-starter. Who's facing more pressure?
I think it's Jalen Milroe because it's at home for Alabama, and look at what they've done the last 15 years. Because of all of that, when you're the starting quarterback at Bama, there's a lot of pressure. And yes, at Texas, there's a lot of pressure under Quinn, but at home, at night, coming, following Bryce, there is a lot of pressure. And guess what? He did everything right last week. 5 touchdowns. He didn't force his athletic ability in the running game, but when they asked for it, guess what? He took off and showed he's one of the best athletes on the field right here. This is ridiculous. This is a 220-pounder that showed I'm also one of the fastest guys on the field, but then he showed his beautiful deep ball ability over and over throughout the day. But so did Quinn Ewers.
Yeah.
And he had a tough start, but I love how Sark continued to be patient with him, and he showed that he can make every single pass there is on the football field. The wide side of the field, short side of the field, he can throw a touch, he can throw with accuracy, and that guy right there, Xavier Worthy, he has to step up big in this game, and he's one of the biggest X factors as well.
Yeah, Texas fans will like to remind you that Ewers, before he was knocked out of last year's game, was just absolutely carving up that Bama defense with surgical execution. I want to go bigger, macro on the conference as a whole. Give me a couple of SEC quarterbacks you're expecting or watching take the next step.
I think 2 of them that are really stepping up. Number 1 is Jackson Dart for Ole Miss.
Okay.
1, because Lane Kiffin is fantastic at continuing to coach and develop young quarterbacks to take the next step. We've done it. We've seen him do it with so many guys, but now we're seeing him do it with someone with a lot of talent, Jackson Dart, that is a thrower, that is a runner, and you look at what he did last week, it was incredible, and I know they weren't playing the best team, but tomorrow, they're going to have to do it in a really big situation against a Tulane team that beat USC in the bowl game, that is bringing a lot of guys back, and they are poised for a very, very good season. I'm excited for Jackson Dart. And then another guy that, he was unbelievable last week, Connor Wegman. And I know a lot of people are still knocking Texas A&M and saying, well, what about Jimbo and Bobby Petrino? Listen, Bobby Petrino was dialing it up, and Connor was rising to the occasion. Over and over, he was putting it on the dot. New Mexico, and I know it's just New Mexico, but they were bringing every blitz that's ever been designed against him, and he was carving them up. I'm excited about both these young men.
You can say what you want about the Petrino era, but it certainly started out with a bang. 5 scores on their first 5 possessions. Heck of a way to start. Tim Tebow, I'm going to need you to serve as security since you just reminded all the fans here that I'm a Georgia fan.
I'm good. I got your back.
But, of course, Kevin, we're talking about the marquee matchup on the college slate. In fact, the last time Texas beat a top 3 team on the road, December 6, 1969, number 1 Texas, number 2 Arkansas. Richard Nixon was the president. He went to the game and said that he would award the winning team a presidential plaque declaring a national championship. Texas fell behind, but then they set up the winning score, completed the comeback. It is a game that is referred to as the game of the century. Some might say those are the coaches of the century, at least around these parts. Bear Bryant, Nick Saban, as Texas has rolled into town to face number 3 Alabama, their first visit to Bryant-Denny in over 120 years. It wasn't even called that back then. College Game Days, Rece Davis is joining us now ahead of tomorrow's festivities. Stop me if you've heard this before. Texas football is back. It feels like we always do this, though, Rece, and yet again, Texas has a chance to sort of have a program-defining win. What do you expect to see?
I expect them to play great because Texas has played well on these big stages from time to time. What they haven't done is consistently win these games, and they haven't won the games they're supposed to. If you go back and, showing that Nixon video is sort of instructive, nobody has more potential than Texas in terms of resources. But the Longhorns have come up short time and again. They're 3-6 in road games under Steve Sarkisian, but this is an opportunity here. They'll have a chance in the passing game, though they've really struggled with Quinn Ewers at quarterback taking these deep shots. He's been good on these underneath type routes. He's had some drop ball, he's had some misfires, but they hit a couple against Alabama last year. I would look for them to take some shots in that regard. Plays like this. He had 2 of 3 throwing the ball 20 yards downfield against Alabama last year, but he has never thrown a touchdown pass like that in his entire career. He'll need some big chunk plays against the Crimson Tide if they are to have this landmark victory. If you think back, Elle, to the year that Alabama and Texas played for the national championship after the 2009 season, since that time, Texas' best season is still worse than Alabama's worst season during that span. They haven't won games against ranked opponents, and this is sort of a put up or shut up game, I think, because many scouts will tell you they have more draftable players in Alabama. They've got a more experienced quarterback than Alabama. And now we'll see if they can handle all of that pressure against supposedly a teetering dynasty and a team that's a little aggravated about people saying that about them.
Yeah, in fact, they've got a whole acronym for it this year, LANK. Let all naysayers know. Speaking of naysayers, people down a little bit on the SEC after last weekend. Tough start. They had 2 losses to the ACC, and then, of course, Florida loses to Utah on the road. What do you expect to see from them as a conference as a whole? Big weekend for them?
It's a huge weekend for them, Elle, because I think that those who root for the SEC and those who love to root against the SEC have a lot of opportunities to do so. The only other game matching ranked opponents is Ole Miss and Tulane. That A&M Miami game, it feels like the stakes are high for momentum for both of those programs, which changed a lot among assistant coaches. LSU obviously should win. Florida should too, but both of those programs coming off losses against Power 5 opponents. Then throw in the Mississippi State-Arizona game, which is going to happen about 80 miles from where we sit right here. Let the SEC lose 2 or 3 of those, and I think it's going to really have an effect on the perception of the overall strength of schedule when you start evaluating teams for the playoff. It'll make the SEC, much like most of the other conferences are, if it's not already, top-heavy with some really good teams, and everybody else sort of middling. Maybe they win if they play well. If they don't, they'll lose.
Yeah, well, listen, all the conferences are shaking the Pac-12, who are perfect after week 1. Every single team won their season opener, and, of course, I'm talking about Colorado, who upset TCU under the talk of the college football world. For a Nebraska team who's still looking for their first one under the Matt Rule era, what do you expect for them to do to contain that Buffs offense?
What they would like to do, and I'm not an expert in UFC or anything like that, but if Nebraska has to chase Colorado around the ring and it gets big, well, then that's a great chance for Colorado. Colorado can do that. We saw Shedeur Sanders. Travis Hunter was brilliant. They had a boatload of 100-yard receivers. So we know they can get out and go fast. Well, TCU wanted to do that too, but Nebraska doesn't. Nebraska wants to get them in that ring, and if Nebraska can ever lock them down and put them in a figure 4 leg lock, like it's down on the mat and they're wrestling, Colorado's going to have a problem.
Okay.
But if they can keep them spread out, then they could do it again.
1,300 miles east or so, we get set for a huge matchup between number 11 Texas, number 3 Alabama in Tuscaloosa, which is kind of ironic because it felt like at some point in that game with Colorado, they were putting up like 1,300 yards of offense, as we are joined now by College Game Days. Desmond Howard, who actually went to Boulder. You got a chance to spend some time with Shedeur Sanders, Colorado's quarterback. What did you learn? What was your biggest takeaway from sitting down with him?
Well, first, Elle, that price hike, we call that the prime time effect. That's the prime effect, right?
Yes, it is. Yesterday's prices ain't today's prices.
There you go. I had a fantastic time talking to Shedeur, the quarterback for Colorado. This is a young man who plays with a chip on his shoulder because when he went to Colorado, everyone said, well, he's just an HBCU quarterback. He's not going to have the same success he had when he was at Jackson State. And what did he do? First game out the gate, went to TCU, threw for over 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, including the game winner in the 4th quarter. But I love his demeanor. I love his style. Sitting down talking to him, I said, what's your nickname? Your dad, Prime, he gives everyone nicknames. He said, my nickname is Grown. I said, you know what? I can see that because he has like a maturity about himself. He was probably like around 10 years old and growing a beard. You know what I mean?
He legitimately was. I've had a chance to spend a couple of seasons around Shedeur at the Celebration Bowl, and he does. He just has this leadership quality, this calmness about him, and he also has the talent. 510 passing yards. That was a school record. Let's talk about the other star. There's 3 stars, right? It's primetime, Shedeur, and then Travis Hunter. He played 146 snaps in that win. Whew. You were incredibly multi-talented yourself back in your college football playing days. Come on, dude. That can't be sustainable that the man can play every snap on both sides.
And Elle, he did it in temperatures that are hotter than what we're in right now, like triple digits. Incredible. But I talked to Travis, and he said, listen, I conditioned myself for this. I trained myself for this, and I knew I could do it at this level. Again, another young man at the HBCU who everyone says, he won't be able to be that effective at the next level. And what did he do? Went out there, played his butt off, and came up with the game-saving INT at the end of the game. I love Travis Hunter, what he brings to the offense, what he brings to the defense. He's another guy, very humble, but has he holds himself to a higher standard. So I love that about him.
Clearly, he was the first player in 20 seasons to record 100 receiving yards and have an interception in a single game. Let's get to why we're here, right? We're talking about Texas and Alabama. What do you need to see, or what secondary issues do you think Bama secondary present to Quinn Ewers on the Texas side?
Well, I think that Alabama, a year ago when they went down to Austin, I thought that Quinn Ewers had some success going vertical. Alabama's going to have to stop them from going vertical. He has some weapons. He has Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, and this is him a year ago going vertical. And then forget, he got hurt, and I think that's when the game changed for the Longhorns. Now, since last year, he cut his mullet. I mean, this man's taking football very seriously. He lost some weight, changed his body, and he know he has these weapons on the perimeter. And then Alabama has a couple of DBs who are banged up, Jalen Key and Malachi Moore. So their secondary is a little bit banged up. Not sure about their availability for tomorrow night, but I do think that when you look at this Alabama defense, they're going to be hungry. They know what's in front of them. They know what's at stake, and they're going to have to stop the screen game, but make sure that they defend the field vertically, because I know that that's what Quinn Ewers is going to try to do, especially with guys like Worthy.
As promised, Stanford Steve is here. Did you know on SportsCenter a pick six is a good thing? It's a good thing. It's all about the money. I want to start with a couple of SEC games that you're looking at. Obviously, we're going to start with the one here, Texas-Alabama.
When you think about this game, I go back and I think about last year's game and going back and watch that tape. The reason Texas was in that game was their defense. They beat up Alabama up front on the defensive side when you looked at Alabama's offense. And when you think about this matchup, all these guys right here are back, 93, 90, 95. And when I look at Alabama, they still have what you want when you're going to attack an offense. Edge rushers, great secondary play. They are back to a Nick Saban defense. I like under the total here. I think both defenses play well in this game. And when we look at the other SEC matchup that all eyes are going to be on, it's A&M going on the road. I was completely wrong last week when you look at what A&M did in the first half. Bobby Petrino gets an A+ for how A&M looked last week, scoring 5 touchdowns on their first 5 drives of the season. I really like A&M on the road against Miami minus the points.
Yeah, so much for trying to work out some of the machinations of a new offense. They were fantastic out of the gate. The Aggies, by the way, won that matchup a year ago by 8 at home. All right, so let's take a look at the rest of the pick six because you've only picked 2, and let's start with a future SEC team. We're talking about Oklahoma facing SMU. What do you like there?
Both teams look great last week. The offenses are going to be at super, high speed. I liked Oklahoma over the total last week because of their offense. When you look at SMU, they love to play up-tempo also. So I like over the total here, 68.5. The key is going to be third downs. Who's efficient on third down? Who stays in manageable situations on third down and keeps momentum going in this game? I think SMU has a chance to win it, but we'll go over the total at 68.5. The next one, not so good. Not many teams have had a worse couple months than Northwestern. They opened their season on the road in Piscataway against Rutgers on Sunday afternoon, and it was as bad as it could get. 3 quarterbacks played in that game for them. They combined to show for 189 yards, but I'm going to take them. They look at their schedule. This is a win. If they don't win this game against UTEP, it's going to get pretty ugly. The next one we have, big one, early game, NC State. Last week, Brennan Armstrong makes his Wolfpack debut at quarterback. Tricky situation. They're a double-digit favorite going up to the rent against UConn. It wasn't pretty, but they got the job done. Now they come home. What does Notre Dame have? We're going to find out. NC State's defense keeps them in the game the whole game. I like NC State plus the points. And our last one here, late on the Palouse, Washington State is at home now. This is from last year. Washington State went to Madison and beat the Badgers and set their season, on the wrong tick downwards. Now they're home. I love that Wazoo got to play this team last year. That's a huge confidence boost going back to Madison and winning. Now you get this team at home. Washington State will be in that game start to finish. I like them plus the points. So there's your 6-pack, Elle. Have at it.
I like it. There's your 6-pack. That's what Stanford Steve is picking for you. Not listed here, maybe a side bet that I'm trying to do here, what he thinks the first Dan and Shay song will be that they'll perform on game day tomorrow. Ooh. Can we do a side bet on that one, a little prop bet, if you will?
Oh, sounds like you got inside information.
Maybe.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.